Even the safest roads are still dangerous, which is why we fit our cars with safety technology like seatbelts and airbags. Even still, over 1 million people die each year as a result of road traffic crashes. But some roads are more dangerous than others, and there are some roads out there for only the most daring of drivers. So join me for today's video as we look through 15 of the most dangerous roads in the world. Number 15. Gullion Tunnel Road. It only takes one look for you to see why this road is so dangerous. Let's start with the fact that it's literally carved into the side of a mountain, and not by an industrial city development project. We're talking about a road that was made by the villagers. Not that I can blame them. Until the road was built, there was no easy way for the villagers to reach the outside world, which highlights another reason why the road is so dangerous. If it fails and there's an accident, it's difficult for rescue workers to get to the scene. And as if the mountain pass wasn't dangerous enough by itself, the road also goes through the inside of the Taihang Mountains. The village of Gullion has an interesting history, taking its name from a rebel during the Han Dynasty who was able to use the inaccessibility of the terrain to take on the imperial army. This worked well for the rebels, but it caused huge problems in the 20th century when the villagers needed easier access to the outside world. The Gullion Tunnel Road is a real community project, with the villagers selling livestock to purchase the materials that they needed. They built the entire road using hammers and chisels because they didn't have any power tools, and at one point, it was taking them 3 days for every meter of tunnel. Number 14. The Road of 52 Tunnels. This road is arguably worth the risk of driving along because it's home to some of the most stunning views you'll ever see. Stretching along a short route in the north of Italy, this crazy road is called Strada delle 52 Gallerie in its native Italian, which translates into its English name of the Road of 52 Tunnels. In fact, I'm talking about a road that's so difficult to drive along that there are chunks of it where vehicles are either restricted or flat out not allowed, although that doesn't stop people from being drawn to it. Like most of the roads on this list, the Road of 52 Tunnels has an interesting history, with it originally being built for the military during the First World War. Perhaps that explains why such a dangerous road was allowed to be built, because soldiers are no stranger to danger, especially in the middle of a war. So as the name suggests, the Road of 52 Tunnels works its way through one tunnel for every cart in a standard deck, taking drivers from the darkness to the light so often that it's easy for them to get disoriented. And if they do, there's a real risk that they'll veer off the road and fall down one of the many drops at the side of it. Number 13. Sichuan Tibet Highway. The Sichuan-Tibet Highway is so dangerous that of every 1,000 people that drive it, 75 of them die. I'm talking about a death rate that's so high that nearly 10% of people who try to traverse this road end up being taken away in a body bag. So why is it so dangerous? Well, mostly due to the weather in the area and the fact that the road is often hit by avalanches, rock slides, and other natural events that can sweep the road and anyone driving along it away. As well as being known for its huge death toll, the Sichuan-Tibet Highway is notorious for being at a high elevation, which brings a bunch of other issues of its own. It's also over 2,000 kilometers long, as well as a regular route for truck drivers. If you're crazy enough to want to drive the entire length of this road, it can take you a couple of weeks, and you'll see all sorts of landscapes and weather along the way. Just be sure to take care on the hairpin turns and to check the weather forecast before you leave. Number 12. Stelvio Pass Road. Alright, we're heading back to Italy for this one, a short ride through the Alps that stretches for around 2 miles. That makes it one of the shortest roads on this list, although that doesn't make it any less deadly. In fact, it's the wind that makes this pass so dangerous, as well as the 75 hairpin turns along the way that provide careless drivers with plenty of opportunities to crash and burn. The Stelvio Pass Road is also at an elevation of nearly 10,000 feet, which can provide an extra challenge if you're not used to being that high. In fact, the Stelvio Pass Road is the highest paved mountain pass in the Eastern Alps, and the second highest in the entire mountain range. It was originally built towards the beginning of the 19th century. The route remains largely the same as it was at its inception. This provides a lot of the challenge, because back in the day, people drove carts and rode horses instead of driving cars. Today, it's easy to make a costly mistake when driving at a high speed, with perhaps the most well-known incident happening when Stirling Moss came off the road at an event in the 1990s. Number 11. Skipper's Canyon Road. Skipper's Canyon Road is so dangerous that if you plan to cruise along it, you need to apply for a special permit. Let that be a warning if you were thinking about just showing up in your car and going for a little drive. Perhaps the most dangerous thing about this road is that if someone's coming the other way, there's every chance that both parties are going to come out of it with injuries. And that's the best case scenario. I'm talking about a road so dangerous that most insurance providers have marked it as an exception, refusing to provide coverage for it. You can find Skipper's Canyon Road on New Zealand's South Island, where it has an impressive reputation as being one of the country's most beautiful roads, as well as one of the scariest and most dangerous. It's also yet another one of those roads that has a huge amount of history behind it. Skipper's Canyon Road was first built in the 19th century, with miners carving it entirely by hand by cutting into the cliffs. The road itself is just over 10 miles long, and it's too narrow for cars to pass each other throughout the majority of the track. Number 10. James Dalton Highway. When you first look at or even hear about the James Dalton Highway, it doesn't seem too different to many of the other highways that are scattered throughout the United States. You might be surprised then to learn that it's easily one of the world's most dangerous roads. One of the reasons for that is that it's full of potholes, and it's subject to harsh winds that sends debris flying across the road, and which have even been known to buffet cars off the road. And if that wasn't enough, the fact that it's in the middle of Alaska means that if you break down, you're in a lot of trouble. It's not exactly as though you're surrounded by civilization. It's also known as Alaska Route 11. The James Dalton Highway is a little over 400 miles long and was built as a supply road. It is one of the most isolated roads in the entirety of the United States, with only 3 towns along the route. Those 3 towns are only home to a combined 73 permanent residents. It didn't take long for it to start to develop a fearsome reputation, which is why it's been included on TV shows like America's Toughest Jobs and the World's Most Dangerous Roads. It's definitely not the kind of road that people go for a casual drive on. If you're on the James Dalton Highway, it's because you're trying to get somewhere. Number 9. Fairy Meadows Way. Fairy Meadows Way. Sounds nice, right? Wrong. Sure, it's easy to think that this would be a picturesque little route, perhaps one that would take you to Middle-earth or Westeros, but the reality is very different. This highway is essentially a 10-mile stretch of road winding through the narrow sides of a mountain in Pakistan. Now, you're probably wondering what that mountain is called, and that tells you a lot about this road too. It's called Killer Mountain. This mountain is dangerous for an obvious reason, because if you slip up and fall off the side of the road, it's a long way down. The road is also unmaintained, with no railings to the sides and sections of it that are so narrow that you can only get through on foot. If you want to visit this insane road for yourself, you'll need to pay a visit to the Fairy Meadows National Park. Just bear in mind that it's not for the faint of heart. One 2013 list ranked it as the 2nd deadliest highway in the world, but I think that there are plenty that are worse. Number 8. Highway to Hell. So I challenge anyone to learn about this road and to not have the AC/DC song stuck in their head. Still, the Highway to Hell is more than just a name. It's an apt description for Route 431, which stretches through part of Alabama. If you're unlucky enough to find yourself driving along this road, one of the first things that you're likely to notice is how many white crosses and floral tributes are dotted alongside it. They're a tangible reminder of just how dangerous this road is. Route 431 has ranked on a ton of lists of the worst highways in the world, with one website calling it the most unbelievably dangerous and spectacular road in the world. It only takes a short drive along it to see why that is. The Highway to Hell has a bunch of factors that all combine together to make it so dangerous, with some of them being man-made and some of them being naturally occurring. It's renowned for its low visibility, and the high speeds and the rapidly changing number of lanes lead to a lot of human error. Number 7. Patiopulo Demikaki Road. This road's got a name that's a bit of a mouthful, and as you can probably tell from the way that it sounds, it can be found in the northeast of Greece, in an area called Atolia Akarnania. You're probably not going to want to pay it a visit, though. What makes it so dangerous then? Well, for a start, it's super narrow, and there are a ton of potholes, but that's not exactly unique in Greece. It also doesn't have any guardrails at the side, and it's known for being super slippery after a rain. If you do decide that you want to go for a drive along this road, you'll first want to travel to the Patiopulo village and then follow the signposts. I wouldn't recommend it though. It's not a great idea to walk it either, unless you're not afraid of out-of-control cars. The road itself is almost entirely unpaved and stretches for just under 30 kilometers, with winding areas and narrow tracks with huge drops on both sides. It's made even more dangerous by the fact that the road is steep and there's not much grip, meaning it's not uncommon for cars to lose control and start slipping and sliding. Number 6. The Road of Bones. Officially called the Federal Automobile Highway Kolmia, the Halcima Highway runs through the east of Russia and has such a fearsome reputation that it's earned the nickname of the Road of Bones. In this case, the nickname can be taken literally. That's because the road was built during Stalin's rule over the Soviet Union, with inmates from gulags and labor camps completing the work. It's believed that as many as 1 million slave laborers passed away during its construction, with the majority of them being buried beneath or around the road. The Road of Bones is built in a region that's known for its extreme cold, and so it was judged that it was easier to bury people within the road than it was to build special graves for them. On top of the cold weather, the road is deteriorated in many places, with bridges collapsing and rivers freezing over. The cold is such a problem here that it's a risk to travel along this road, and if your vehicle breaks down, you'll quickly find yourself in a lot of trouble. In fact, there's a town called Oymyakon, which is only 100 kilometers away from the highway that holds the record for being the coldest inhabited place on Earth. Number 5. Halcima Highway. The Halcima Highway is a major road in the Philippines that leads to Sagada, a big draw for tourists. It's also known as the Benguet Mountain Province Road. It's a national highway in the Philippines, which formerly held the record for the country's highest altitude highway, climbing up to 2,300 meters. So what makes this 150-kilometer highway so dangerous? Well, there's a few reasons, but perhaps the most obvious ones is that it's badly maintained and that there are a ton of landslides. It's not uncommon for buses full of people to skid off the sides. Unfortunately, it's also a vital part of the country's infrastructure, and so even though it's super dangerous, it's not as though people have much choice. It's particularly important to the area's farmers. All in all, it's definitely one of the more dangerous roads on this list, which explains why it was included in the Discovery World show called Hot Roads, the World's Most Dangerous Roads. It's also featured on a number of lists of the world's most dangerous roads, usually ranking in the top 10, like this one. Number 4. Highway of Death. Officially called the BR-116, the Highway of Death is Brazil's second longest road and the country's most dangerous, as well as one of the most dangerous in the world. It earned its disturbing sobriquet because literally thousands of people die on it every year, as well as the usual suspect, poor maintenance. The Highway of Death is also one of the few roads in the world that still falls victim to bandits. And I'm not talking about Dick Turpin shouting your money or your life. I'm talking about organized gangs of armed robbers. Stretching out for nearly 5,000 kilometers, the Highway of Death is also home to an unusually large number of road traffic collisions and a ton of adverse weather conditions that change from day to day. It stretches from Sao Paulo to Curitiba. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, the highway's often also used by truck drivers, with huge trucks passing each other at high speeds on narrow lanes, with no dividers between the two lanes of oncoming traffic. 60% of all vehicles on the Highway of Death are trucks. Number 3. Killer Highway. The Killer Highway is another road from the Philippines and earned its nickname because of the large number of collisions that have taken place since its construction. It's properly called Commonwealth Avenue. This road in Quezon City is used by pedestrians and cyclists who often fall victim to the traffic. There are quite a few reasons for this, although most people blame the authorities for the ability to police and regulate the area. It's also got a ton of traffic, and so because of that, there are more opportunities for accidents than there are on most other roads. The good news about this road is that at least it's paved, which is very different to a lot of the others that we've talked about. It's only around 8 miles long, but it's super wide, branching into as many as 18 lanes in some areas, and that's why it's believed to be the widest road in the country. The Killer Highway witnesses as many as 5 accidents every day, and the buses are particularly known for careless driving. It's got no streetlights, which causes a lot of problems at night, and the lack of adequate drainage means that it often floods too. Number 2. Mugia Pass. The Mugia Pass winds through the Annamite mountain range between Vietnam and Laos, connecting major roads between the two countries. According to one estimate from the 1960s, 3/4 of all the trucks going into Laos went through the Mugia Pass. One of the interesting things about this road is that it's played an important role during the Vietnam War. It was the main entry point for the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and was described by the CIA as carved out of the steep hillside, for in most places there's not enough room for both road and stream in the constricted bottom of the ravine. The pass is considered to be one of the more dangerous roads because of the high volume of traffic and the lack of room for maneuvering, as well as the fact that there are a whole bunch of trucks traveling along this pass. The Mugia Pass was also featured in an episode of The World's Most Dangerous Roads, featuring Sue Perkins and Liza Tarbuck. They traverse the pass before heading into some of the more remote parts to the east of Laos. Number 1. Road of Death. The Road of Death is a regular at the top of the lists of the most dangerous roads in the world, and with good reason. It's alarmingly common to see large vehicles like trucks and buses trying to overtake one another and sliding over the edge. Located in Bolivia, this road is officially called the North Yungas Pass, and it's nicknamed by the locals as the Camino de la Muerte. Thrill seekers can be found speeding along the road on the backs of mountain bikes too. Like many other roads on this list, the Road of Death peaks at a high altitude, although it drops over 3,000 meters along the way. As well as its steep sides, it's also known for being super slippery and for being covered with rocks, stones, and pebbles that can throw off bikes and cars alike. The Road of Death has an interesting history, with it initially being built around 100 years ago by Paraguayan prisoners of war. The good news for those who want to travel safely is that a new highway has been built that includes all of the safety features you could ask for. So these days, you only need to cruise along it if you want the thrill of it. Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.